Be careful what you order. When I was young, the first time I ate pizza was on a vacation abroad when I ordered a pizza margherita as plain of a pizza as it's possible because of my childish tastes. Unfortunately for the vegetable-hating child that I was, to my displeasure they put tomato slices on the pizza. So while I enjoyed the taste of the pizza itself, the slices had to go else I wouldn't eat it. A while later, when I was back home again, we ordered pizza for delivery. Remembering my only previous experience with pizzas, I was adamant that it had to be without tomato slices. Unbeknownst to me, this had led to a misunderstanding, as in my country the pizza margherita did not have tomato slices to begin with, it's just tomato sauce, cheese and spices. So what I ultimately revived could be only described as dry crispy cheese on top of a hard bread bottom. No tomato sauce in sight. That was the time I got punished for my childish tastes. Not sure if the compliance was malicious or that they thought it was an allergy, as I wasn't in the pizza store when they complied and it changed sauce to sauce for that one guy who hated my spelling mistake. But I wanted a silver laptop. First time posting here, so apologies for any mistakes. This story dates back to about 9 years ago when I 31 at the time. This took place worked as a lead IT technician for a very large multinational company. It's a bit long, so sorry about that. The company had a range of different laptops available for employees to choose from that were classified by their size and weight. This is important later, including standard laptop C, a typical laptop with a 14 screen, as well as lightweight laptops, smaller, thinner and with a 12.5 screen, handy if you're a frequent traveler. Most of these laptops were pretty boring, gray, business devices, nothing special to look at. Anyway, one day the computer manufacturer introduced a new lightweight laptop model that was silver in color and far more sleek and good looking than the previous gray model. We deployed a few of these around the building and soon got a visit from a lady who'd seen one of her colleagues with a shiny new silver laptop and had developed a severe case of shiny device envy. I'll call her shiny employee SE for the purpose of this story. SE, how do I go about getting one of those smaller laptops? Your current standard laptop isn't due to be replaced yet, but you can request a change to a lightweight laptop on the IT website. Your manager will need to approve it. However, now to be honest, I wasn't a particular fan of people who waste the company's money simply by wanting the latest shiny gadget, especially because it creates additional work for my team, and involves replacing equipment that is still perfectly functional and within warranty. But I behaved in a professional manner and simply toed the company line. SE walked away, and the next day an approved request came through for a lightweight laptop. Fair enough. What she didn't know was that company policy dictated that we only provided a brand new laptop if we didn't have usable second-hand laptops in stock, those handed back to IT from people who'd left the company. Being the good IT tech that I am, I scoured our return shelf and sure enough there was a used lightweight laptop in stock. Unfortunately for this lady, it was last year's gray model. But rules are rules, so I asked one of my team to prep it for her. She's then told that it's ready and comes along to pick it up. She takes one look at it and promptly throws a tantrum. SE, this isn't the one I wanted. I wanted the silver one. Me, sorry. Company policy is that we can only order a new laptop if we don't have usable second-hand ones in stock. SE, but this is not the one I ordered. Me, yes it is. You ordered a lightweight laptop and this is exactly what we've set up for you. I turn the laptop over and show her the company sticker confirming it to be the same classification of lightweight laptop as her request, and show her that it is physically smaller and lighter than her existing laptop. SE, no, I wanted a new silver one. This is unacceptable. I'm going to complain to your boss. She stormed off in a huff and I could soon hear her complaining inside my boss's office. Unfortunately, although my boss knew I was just following process, he couldn't handle all of the repeated moaning and soon folded and asked me to order a new device for her. I wasn't at all pleased at being overruled when I was simply applying company policy, particularly when it's just a waste of money for an SE that wants the latest silver gadget. So cue malicious compliance time. I could have just scoured our shelf of brand new laptops and dug out a new one for her. We installed dozens of laptops a week. It was a big company, so we always had plenty of new ones in stock, but I was told to order a new one. So that's the process I'd follow. Me, okay, we can order a brand new silver one for you, but you'll need to raise another request ticket so we can order the laptop from it. I said this knowing full well that this ticket would go to SE's manager once again for approval, a manager who has a finite department budget. Sure enough, an hour later I get a phone call from SE's manager. Manager, why is SE ordering yet another laptop? Me, she didn't like the color of the laptop we'd prepared for her. It was gray and she wanted a silver one. Manager, how much is this going to cost me? Me, well, You'll still be paying the monthly lease costs on SE's original laptop as it wasn't due for replacement, plus the lease costs of the lightweight laptop we prepared for her earlier, and there'll also be the lease costs for this new laptop as well. Manager: oh hell no, I'm not paying for all that. I'll reject this ticket and I'll have a word with her. A short while later, SE returns. She's rather quiet and humble now after being chastised by her boss for trying to waste all his budget in the pursuit of having the latest shiny silver gadget. She quietly accepts the gray lightweight laptop we prepared earlier for her and then quickly departs. I spend the rest of the day with a grin on my face. Karma is a bitch, and so was she. Cross-posted elsewhere. It being Christmas time reminded me of story from quite a few years ago, from when I was a bartender in a corporate-style cookie-cutter restaurant. I mostly worked nights, but had one regular mid-shift on Fridays. We were always super busy at the bar for lunch on Fridays and usually had quite a few of the mall workers coming in to eat then head back to work. Nearly every Friday the same smug, borderline rude lady came in for lunch. Every time she paid exact change, zero tip. Maybe half the time she would complain over some minor inconvenience, and more than a few times got a comp meal. The more I had to wait on her, the more indignant and pissed I got. So around Christmas time I was out and about in the mall buying for family and friends. Picked out something nice for my girlfriend at the time, a sheer top which I thought would look amazing on her, decently priced with it being on sale too. Walking up to the cashier, I was a bit surprised to run into resting bitch face. Whatever. In street clothes I felt like she barely registered who I was, or maybe she really didn't care who was at her register. Maybe both. So, I hand her a $20 bill. She examines it for a moment, turned it over twice, held it up to the light even. Then, out comes the counterfeit pen marker. Thinking to myself, a bit excessive, no? Change should have been around $1 and change. Surprisingly, she hands out $81 plus change. She calls next in line, so I step to the side for a moment in contemplation. I could honestly feel the devil on one shoulder and angel on the other. Took me a moment or two, but I finally let my moral compass win and stepped back in front of the register. I nicely explained that there was a mistake made, but before I could continue she shot me down and briskly told me in a semi-professional tone to GTFO. So, I did. The way I look at it, all those lost tips and the money she just gifted me was just karma. Sucked to be her, I guess. Come up with a chapter title? Your wish is my command. Not really sure if this belongs here because it wasn't really malicious and not that big of a deal. However, it is just an amusing memory I have from my middle school days. In 8th grade, my English teacher came up with a clever idea for when we started a new book. He decided that, after we had finished reading a chapter, we would all come up with potential chapter names. This book did not have chapter titles. Once they were all submitted, the teacher would read them all and we would all collectively vote about which one was the best one, and that would be the unofficial title of the chapter. It was just a fun creative exercise to help break up the otherwise boring process of reading as a class. After we finished chapter 3, we all submitted our chapter titles. There were some pretty clever chapter titles, but the one that stuck out most to me was the Fact 1 student's proposed title 3. There were quite a few laughs in the room, including from yours truly. Part of me kinda wanted to vote for that title, but I didn't. If I were the teacher, I would have given that students extra credit for being clever. I wouldn't even be mad that they were being a smartass. A clever smartass is still clever. Act like a jerk? Pay the stupid tax. Way back in the late 1900s, during some of my high school years, I worked at a location of the restaurant chain prophesized in Demolition Man to one day be the victor of the fast food wars, along with several other buddies from school. In those days, one could purchase a taco, in hard or soft shell form, for 79 cents. It was the same then as it is now: shell, meat, lettuce, cheese. If you wanted the supreme version, which added tomatoes and sour cream, it cost 99 cents. If you wanted to add sour cream to any menu item, it was a 25-cent upcharge. Many people would come in and order a taco with sour cream added, and generally, we would repeat it back as a taco supreme no tomatoes, knowing that ringing it up this way saved the person 5 cents. Shocking life hack most people don't know. If anyone asked, we'd explain why we rung it up that way, and most folks were cool about it. But sometimes, and sadly more frequently than one would hope for, you'd have the jerks who just couldn't comprehend things like logic. That's not what I ordered, etc. Nowadays I believe they would be called Karens. Back then we just called them CNTs. When we encountered those people, it wasn't worth my barely minimum wage time to try and explain things like economics or basic math to people way above my pay grade. So we'd just say, sorry about that. I'll correct it, and ring it up exactly how they ordered. Widely known as the stupid tax. Yeah, it's entirely petty and mostly insignificant when it was only 5 cents per taco, but we were teenagers working part-time at Taco Bell. What do you expect? Bin collection. I have been a long-time lurker hoping one day to post, and today it seems is the day. We have bin collection every 2 weeks, so it's safe to say it's always rammed and smelly and I want it gone ASAP. Every Sunday night I put the bin out, always in between the cars as it gets very windy on my road. Usually on Monday morning the bin is collected before we leave for work, so I roll it down to my gate and carry on. Alas, for the second fortnight in a row my bin was not collected. I contacted my neighborhood's management company about this, and stated this is the second instance and I was now quite annoyed and would like them to contact the bin collection company to come back at their earliest convenience and also to make a complaint on my behalf. The last time they came the next day, so I was hoping for the same. However, this time the company said they collected at 08:30, that I did not leave out my bins in time, and that they would come back a week later. The management company in turn said it was obviously my fault and I would have to wait until the following week with an already overflowing, smelly bin. They also advised that in future it would be best if I took pictures as proof every week, as well as putting the bins out before the company come around. You can all see where this is going. Little does the passive-aggressive management company know that I have a Ring doorbell, so I have now sent them a video of me on Sunday night putting the bin out, as well as a video of me leaving for work on Monday at 07:30, the bin clearly still full and an hour prior to the time the bin company said they were out for collection and that my bin was not out. I am also going to send them these videos weekly until the day I die. Can't give a kid a book? Fine, I'll just teach it instead. TLDR made it illegal to give a book to a kid. I still teach the book. I'm a teacher in a middle school here in Florida, off today for a doctor visit in Florida. Recently passed a law to make it a felony to give a book to a kid that a parent finds objectionable. So a bunch of us threw out our classroom libraries last school year. It made me sad. I had books about dinosaurs, the planets, animals, just good stuff that kids love to read about. Not one single piece of sexual material in there unless you count the Human Body Functions book. But I'm not going to prison because some fundamentalist nutjob got upset I had a book about evolution or something available. However, and this is key, I can still teach about those things that some parents don't like because it is in our state-adopted curriculum. I just can't give their kids a book about it. Flat Earth, debunk it. Anti-vax bullshit, debunk it. Galileo and other scientists were prosecuted by religious fanatics. Teach it evolution, including how humans evolved. Teach it true history of the earth, not this 6,000-year-old bullshit. Debunk it. Crystals, essential oils, faith healing, psychics, mediums, etc. Debunk it. Climate and environmental change caused by humans. Teach it. Chemtrails, fake moon landing, crying statue, religious miracles. Debunk it. The best part is pseudoscience, history of space exploration, and human impact on the environment are part of our state standards, which means I'm not breaking any laws, rules or regulations at all. A lot of this stuff is actually in our district adopted textbook. I am simply maliciously complying with a stupid fucking law. So fine, I can't give your kid a book about a specific subject, but I will teach with fidelity every single thing in those books I had to get rid of if it aligns with our state standards, and there isn't a damn thing Meatball Ron DeSantis or anyone else can do about it because I am doing my job using district-adopted materials. They got rid of the offensive library books, but the textbooks with the same material still are being used. Lol. I love what I do. The kids keep me young. Education is the single most important institution in this world, because without it we regress. Edit HB 1467 doesn't impose penalties, but there are separate laws that do. So if a parent objects to something being overly sexual or whatever, they can say it is pornography, file a complaint, and we can be charged. Our union told us to just get rid of everything, because they fully expect lawsuits from parents to ramp up over everything, not just the supposed hardcore pornography we have in our schools. Edit 2. Ignorance I can cure, willful ignorance I can't. I'm blocking anyone who is displaying willful ignorance, such as the person arguing with me that crystals have healing powers. My job to teach an adult to think. Sad that my 11-14-year-old students are smarter than some adults. Edit 3. I've offended some folks, and all of my comments have caught down votes. Lol. I'm loving the fact that I'm destroying them with facts, and this is their reaction. Too much lead in your water, folks. Thanks to the rest for the support. I do love teaching. Brad on the table. This story was told to me by my friend Lucy. At the time, she lived in an army town and worked for many summers at a restaurant popular with the officers and their families. At this particular restaurant, which is on the higher end, there's a table reserved for high-ranking officers who visit the base. People who worked there referred to it as the table. On busier nights when there isn't a higher-ranking officer in town, it's utilized to seat more patrons, but for the most part, it's left alone. It's Friday, so it's busy. There is a general visiting the base, so the table isn't being used just in case he decided to grace the establishment with his presence. Lucy is manning her section when the owner, named John for the purposes of this story, waves her down. She heads over and he tells her I need you and another server to help me man the table. The general is coming? She asked. Nope, Brad is. Lucy rolled her eyes. Brad was a local bigwig's high school aged. He had it in his mind that he was a hotshot. He frequented the restaurant with his girl of the week and proceeded to make a nuisance of himself every time, but not enough to the point that he was asked to leave. Lucy asked John, are you sure? What if the general wants to eat dinner with us? At this, John leaned in with a wide smile and said apparently the general called and told us to give Brad the table and to give him and his guests anything he wanted. Lucy then smiled as she realized what was about to happen. Brad was about to get a serving of malicious compliance on the house. 20 minutes later, Brad wearing a West Point blazer arrives with several young people. John makes a big show of greeting them and escorting them to the table. The people look around, impressed, and Brad proceeds to command Lucy, John and Annie around like he owns the restaurant. The only good thing about this particular experience was that due to him being underaged, Brad and his buddies never tried to order any alcohol. Brad proceeded to be a nuisance, demanding more appetizers, sending food back because it wasn't cooked just right, ordering the most expensive entrees on the menu, yada, yada, yada. Lucy, Annie and John continue with this, smiling as more and more food is added to the table. It's time for the check. Lucy told me that the entire group managed to rack up $843.29. Not counting the mandatory gratuity because the party is above a certain size. Brad gets the bill and he flips out. What is this? He barked, waving the check. It's your check, John said. The general said to let you order anything you wanted. Brad stands up to that's when the host rushes up, her face white. General is here, she whispered. Everyone turns to look and there's the general with his entourage. John excuses himself before going over. He and the general start to talk for a few. Lucy notices Brad turning white and starting to get out of his seat. Annie looked at him and said, you better not try a dine and dash. She said, I really don't want to have to sick these nice officers on you. Brad sat down and fidgeted. John and the general come back to the table, making eye contact with Brad. John said, Brad, you said the good general here insisted you have the table and that you can order anything you want. Is this true? He only nodded. Well, the general here said that he never made no such phone call. That's odd, Brad said before looking at the general. I'm pretty sure it was you I talked to. Sir, I have the phone number. Let's call it, John said, pulling out his cell phone and dialing a number. That's when they hear Brad's brand new cell phone going off in his pocket. The general held his hand out and Brad puts the phone in his hand. He checks the number and asks, John, is your number 123-456-7890? It is, John said. The general then proceeded to get a serious look on his face. You a cadet? I'm being considered for an appointment, Brad said. The general nodded. I suggest you pay your bill, tip in full and apologize to the staff for your behavior. He said to Brad, I also suggest withdrawing your name as soon as possible to save yourself the embarrassment. Keeping his head down, Brad paid the bill, meekly apologized and left with his sycophants. The general and his entourage patiently waited for the table to be cleared and set. They proceeded to have a nice meal, leaving a generous tip and apologizing for people like Brad. Lucy proceeded to have a wonderful Brad-free career. Christmas Employee Appreciation Party. This happened a few years ago, but being this time of year it always makes me laugh to think about it. I worked at this place for close to 14 years, and I've always been the type of person to put up with a lot. We always had our Christmas Employee Appreciation Party in January, as December was crazy busy. I had only been there a few months when we were told about when and where the party would be. A few weeks before, there was a memo posted in the staff room titled The Rules of Going Out. I kid you not. Basically it was the owner's rules of how things were going to go down for our party. It went like this. She liked to use lots of capital letters and exclamation marks. 1. The party is for employees only, no spouses. 2. I will pay for one drink only. 3. You can have an appetizer or dessert, not both. 4. Attendance is mandatory. I thought it was funny, and laughed about it to one of my colleagues. They didn't laugh and told me that the owner wasn't joking. She was dead serious. Keep in mind that at the most, there would have been 12 people attending, and that she would completely write this off as a business expense, so why be so cheap? I didn't want to rock the boat, so the first year I just owed the line. The next year the same memo appeared a few weeks before the party. Pretty sure she just saved it to the computer and printed it off every year. The second year and the few years after that we still went out to a restaurant. I thought, fine. You're going to be that cheap and appreciating all the hard work we do all year plus not treating us very nicely? Fine. Cue malicious compliance. Everyone orders their drinks before their meal. I get water. She looks at me and asks, aren't you going to order a drink? I tell her yes, but I will have it with dessert as I can't drink without eating anything first. True. Everyone orders a glass of wine, a cocktail, what have you. We eat our entrees, then the dessert menu comes. I ask if they have a Scotch menu. They do. and she asks to look at it. When I am done with it, they also had those fancy coffees on there as well. I order my dessert, and look at the scotch menu and order the most expensive per ounce scotch. They have about $26 an ounce at the time. I'm not going to waste my one drink only on a $7 glass of wine. I'm getting the most expensive scotch there is, and make a point of savoring it. So good. I've never had this one before. I get the death glare, but hey, I'm enjoying my one drink only. Still makes me laugh. Debit cards. I work at Woodforest National Bank. For those who don't know, it's a bank based out of Texas, located primarily on the East Coast inside of Walmart. This story happened about a month ago. One of our usual entitled Karen customers comes into the bank demanding we print her a new debit card because she lost her old one. We issue debit cards same day so long as they pay a debit card fee. $10 for a reprint or $15 for a new card waived for certain accounts. A reprint was a simple task, so I print her card and sent her on her way. She then walks back into the bank because the last two numbers were slightly rubbed off. This is due to how the machine prints the cards and is pretty common. I want you to print this card again. Me, is it not working? Look at the last two numbers. Other banks don't give me cards with rubbed off numbers. Me, I'm sorry ma'am, but sometimes that happens with the machine. It rubs part of the numbers off when activating the chip. I don't care, it looks terrible. Do it again. Me, ma'am, I don't think this is a good idea. We really don't have control over how the machine. Raising her voice, I don't care what you have to do. Just print my card again so it looks nice. She takes a pair of scissors and cuts up the card into tiny pieces in front of me. Print the F card now, or do I have to close my account and contact market manager's name? The market manager isn't someone you would know unless you have had a conversation with him before. It's obvious she's trying to name drop him to get me to shut up and comply. Malicious compliance. I turn over to my manager and he gives me a nod. I then put on a devious smile and say absolutely. Devious smile and say absolutely ma'am. But to ensure this won't happen again, we will need to change the numbers, so I'm going to need you to sign some things. Was that so hard? We then spend the next 10 minutes printing out new cards until we get one that doesn't have the number slightly rubbed off. Each time the card isn't to her liking, she cuts it up and says to do it again. I just smile and say sorry about this, let's try again each time, until about 8 cards later she finally gets a card number that isn't rubbed off. Finally, this card looks good. Thanks. She just leaves with a smug grin, thinking she won and leaving us with her massive pile of cut-up debit cards. What we forgot to remind her of is having a completely new card generated outside of fraud or expiration cost $15 to be deducted from your account. This is made clear at account opening, and since she signed off on having all these new cards printed, there was nothing she could say. Normally I try and help people avoid bank fees, but in this case F this entitled woman. A couple days later she comes storming into the bank looking pissed. WTF did you do to my account? Me, I'm sorry ma'am, but what seems to be the problem? There's a bunch of debit card fees on my account. WTF did you do? Me, oh, every time you had me print a new debit card for you the other day, a $15 fee was charged to your account. The first one where you only had me reprint the card number was only $10. You need to reverse these fees right now, before I call market manager name and get you fired. At this point my manager steps in. Manager, hello ma'am, what's the issue? Your Doomba employee tricked me into paying over $100 worth of fees because he kept FING up. My debit card. Manager, ma'am, could you please not yell? Also, I was there. You demanded we print you a new debit card because you didn't like the numbers being rubbed off. We have your signature on these forms stating that you wanted these cards to be printed. I will not be reversing these fees for you. Then I want to close me account. Manager, okay, but first you need to pay off your negative account balance as well as your line of credit. Just give me market manager name's number. This isn't me, sorry ma'am, but we aren't at liberty to just give out his number like that. Here's the number to customer service if you would like. This is true, as he's instructed us to not give his number out to any customer who asks. The only people who need his number already have it. She takes the number, screams, "They'll have your jobs for." This flips us off, kicks over a chair and storms out. We get a call from customer care later about the incident, where we explain everything and scan over all the signed debit card applications. Also, she had us print 8 brand new cards in the one reprint. That cost her about $130 in fees because she demanded a new debit card. The best part is my manager likely would have just waived the original $10 fee had she just been nice and asked decorate instead of doing my work. Sure. Told this story as a reply in our anti-work, and a few people mentioned it should be a post here. Several years ago, I was working for an organization, and they were having their annual holiday decorating competition between the different departments. There were a couple of departments that basically took turns winning every year because a few of the staff there went absolutely nutty with decorating. The departments gave a little budget toward this event, but a few staffers from those two departments put in their own dollar on top of the department funds and just created some insane, over-the-top displays. I saw pics from a few years. Some of them were very cool, but also probably took a few staffers a few days to set. Probably cost at least $500 or more for decorations. That's not counting the staff hours that went into it. So my department had its own new office that year. In previous years we had been in a small area behind and other people didn't even know we were there. But that year we were in a nice office space and on the ground floor. So my executive director decides we are gonna compete. I think she just wanted to show off to her boss. So she tells me, KG Capybara, since you'll be in the office working this weekend, you can make a good start on decorating the office for the competition. Me, I will be in the office this weekend. But that's because I'll be working on these. We need to be in a good place with these projects before the new year. Boss, well, no reason you can't do both. Spend a few hours decorating and the rest working. I had only planned to be in the office about 4 or 5 hours anyway. So a few hours decorating wouldn't leave me much time to devote to the projects. Me, I'd like to get these projects to a good place before our holiday. I'm also not much of a decorator. This is actually true. I moved 14 times in about 17 years. I think it killed any desire I may have had to decorate. And I'm a tomboy, not very feminine in how I dress or present myself, which I think always bothered boss lady, and not very good with decorating. Boss, are you refusing to help your coworkers with this? Note: refusing to help coworkers was a phrase she pulled out most any time someone pushed back on her. Came from the business world to a different industry and wanted to incorporate business ideas that didn't always work. Me, nope. I'll try to spend some time decorating. Then that weekend, I stopped at a dollar store and bought several rolls of wrapping paper, put it on the department credit card. When I went into the office, I spent about 2 or 3 hours wrapping everything I could think of that was a stable object. Wrapped most of our desks, our filing cabinets, some bookshelves, some end tables we had in the front office, making them unusable. Someone would have to break through the wrapping paper and ruin the decoration to get into the filing, the bookshelves. Everyone spent the next week not being able to functionally do some other work because they couldn't get into their desk or filing cabinet. Our office had a very easy week right before the holiday. We didn't even place in the competition, smiley face, and I heard boss lady got scolded the next month by her boss because we were behind on the projects. Employer only paid us on time if we faxed our timesheets. This happened about 10 years ago when I was working on the railways near London. I worked for an agency which supplied staff to the railways on a temporary basis. They were very old-fashioned, and as part of our employment contract they stated that our hand-completed timesheets had to be faxed by 7:00 p.m. on the Thursday for us to be paid on the Friday. Timesheets that were emailed even before 7:00 p.m. would result in wages not being paid until the following Friday. Obviously they chose the most inconvenient way, as it was 2014 and nobody had a fax machine, so that they were able to legally retain our wages in their account for an extra week. But my printer at home had a fax machine built in that I never used, winking face. So after my first week, I plugged in my printer to the phone line, faxed my timesheet to the agency and waited. The next day, I still hadn't been paid. So I phoned them and asked why I hadn't been paid, but the response was explained in a dull voice by somebody who had obviously repeated the same sentence so many times that it had lost all meaning to her. As explained in your contract, only timesheets that have been faxed to us are paid the next day. If you've emailed it, your wages will be paid the following week. But I did fax it. She gathered her thoughts for a moment before replying, "Oh. Okay. Which number did you fax it to?" So I gave her the number I faxed it to, which was correct. Okay. I'll just place you on hold." She came back on the phone a couple of minutes later. "Okay, yes, we've got it. Sorry, I can't remember the last time somebody actually faxed their timesheet to us. I'll get that paid now." As you can imagine, I told my colleagues the following day, and from then on, they all gave their timesheets to me to fax when I got home, so they got paid on time. At the time I wondered if they dropped the silly fax versus email rule, but it continued, and so every week I'd fax in half a dozen timesheets to them. "Fine, we'll gladly let you leave." This happened recently. We have a monthly local basketball event, normally 4 to 6 hours. It is all in good fun and we often play under the winner stays on rule. Originally people would create a team and come play. This way you could play with your friends, but it used to cause an issue with good players only wanted to play with good player, and sometimes bad team only want to play with their friends, making it uncompetitive. If you come late or don't have a team, you are often treated as a sub. So now LJ, the event organizer, makes sure teams are spread out to ensure everyone gets a chance of winning and staying on. My team consisted of myself, a guy LJ knew from playing in the park, we'll call him Parker, 3 other guys, Tony, James, and Melo all fake names. LJ thought we were a decent team as Parker and I play often, as well as Tony being quite dull. We just played our first game and we lost. It was not a big deal as we often always treat these as a feeler game, see how intense good everyone is playing. Parker took a majority of the shots because he wanted to play point of position where you start with the ball. I didn't complain as I wanted to know his play style. The team we lost against was good but they weren't amazing. Second game comes around. Played them again. Parker's doing the same thing and I going playing well. I have 6 out of our 6 point playing 1s and 2s. It is a tied game at Parker is ball hogging and missing. I keep calling for the ball but he is just forcing shots up with multiple defenders on him. We end up losing and he is hot. He is shouting and complaining about how we should have done better. To which one guy goes, he's not passing the ball. This man has the audacity to then lie and go, what do you mean? I am the only one keeping our team in the game. I kicked off and shout we had 6 points. I scored all 6 points. Shooting and scoring aren't the same thing. He is now mad and complaining about how we are holding him back. We have now been there for about 1 hour and one of the guys on the team we lost to has to go for a collection. Parker's still shouting and complaining about how we are holding him back and talks about how he is now leaving us for a better team. We were more than happy for this to happen. During events it is often when you have a team you stick to that team in the name of fairness and don't allow changing. Once this man left, we stopped losing games and went on massive winning streak, beating Parker repeatedly. He was doing his antics with the other team as well. Eventually the guy came back and they didn't need him anymore. This man then had the audacity to try and weasel himself back into our team. We rejected him under the pretense of we already have full team. Sorry. He was livid and went to LJ complaining, but there was nothing he could do because it was his decision to originally leave when he didn't have to. How I ended up barking as loudly as I could in the middle of the principal's office. This story randomly popped into my head. Not the most extreme example of MC, but it's a goofy little story some people might find funny. Also apologies for the length. Brevity isn't my strong suit. I had a core group of friends in high school, but like a lot of people our friend group had peripheral friends who would occasionally hang out with us. Abby was one of these peripheral friends. I never liked her. She got into a lot of trouble and she was always really mean to me. We didn't have much interaction unless she needed something, usually homework help or lunch money. My friends and I usually ate lunch at a quiet stairwell that only a few people would walk up and down during the lunch period. Abby usually didn't join us, but on this particular day she did. Near the end of lunch, a group of 3 girls walked down the stairs. I was talking to another friend at the time so I missed what one of the girls said to Abby, but Abby responded by barking like a dog. The girl then turned around, said, "Did you really just do that to me?" And Abby barked once again. The girls turned around and stormed off, muttering to themselves. At that point the bell rang and I went to class. This seemed like such a non-thing to me at the time. I completely forgot about it after it happened. Cut to the next day. I'm in the middle of class when the principal's secretary comes into my classroom. "Is you aggressive Fiamango here? Mr. Potter needs to see her in his office." Now, I was a good kid. Never got in trouble, never got a single detention, never skipped a single class. So when I was called to the principal's office, that started a bunch of chattering among my classmates. Even my teacher, as I was leaving, asked, "What did you do?" Humiliating. I go into Mr. Potter's office. He was an intimidating guy. Former college football player, always wore sunglasses, looked like he could rip your head off with his bare hands. Everyone was terrified of this guy. I sat down across from his desk. He confirmed my name, then he said, "I understand you witnessed a confrontation between Abby Johnson and Christina Smith yesterday?" I said, "I know who Abby Johnson is, and I saw her yesterday, but I'm not sure who Christina Smith is." He already seemed annoyed. Apparently there was some sort of confrontation between Abby and Christina and 2 of her friends in the West Hall during lunch yesterday. I suddenly remember what happened. Ooh yeah, I did see that. I don't think I'd describe it as much of a confrontation though. They ended up getting into a physical altercation. You don't think that's a confrontation? Me-oh, I didn't realize a fight happened. I just saw them exchange a few words. The bell rang, and they went in separate directions. I went to class as soon as the bell rang and didn't see anything beyond that. Okay, well, what did you see? I proceed to describe what I mentioned above, including the barking. I believe I said, "And then Abby barked at Christina." Mr. Potter looked confused. "Could you be more specific? What did she bark at her?" Now, for the non-native English speakers who might not know this could also be a regional thing, I don't know. Barking is a word that can mean the sound a dog makes, but it can also just be a synonym for yelling. However, as nervous as I was in this moment, I completely forgot about the second meaning of it, which is what he was clearly thinking I was saying. So I responded, "You know, she was barking at her." He was clearly very annoyed at this point. His voice kept getting louder. "I need you to be more specific. How was she barking?" "Me no. Like a dog?" "I have no idea what you're talking about." "B. More specific. Tell me exactly what she said. We can all see where this is going. Now, my high school was in a 250-year-old building with a lot of winding echo-y hallways. If your sneaker so much as squeaked on the floor in the main hall, you could hear it in a classroom down the hall and around the corner. Mr. Potter's office was in the main entryway, center of this hallway, and the door was open since classes were in session and no one was walking the halls. At this point I was annoyed. I was dragged out of class, embarrassed publicly, and now I was being yelled at for doing nothing wrong? Okay, let me demonstrate the barking, Mr. Potter. And bark I did. I started barking like a dog as loudly as I could. Mr. Potter jumped back in his chair a little and started going, okay, I get it. I kept going. I had to give him the full picture, right? The woman working at the front office across the hall jogged over to see what was going on, but I kept going. Finally Mr. Potter cut me off. Okay, you were clearly meaning literally barking. My apologies. You can go back to class. He wrote me a note and I, very amused by myself, went back to my classroom. At lunch that day, while I was waiting to get food, I heard a random person behind me talking about the weird barking they heard while they were in class that morning. Apparently it brought their entire class to a halt for a few seconds. I got rid of them, boss, just like you asked. Short and simple one today. Shouldn't need a TLDR hopefully. This took place where I work at a funeral home. We had several sets of straps for our lowering device, the thing that slowly lowers a coffin into the ground, and orders came from one of the managers to get rid of all the sets we had as new ones were coming in. I tried to protest that the new ones had arrived and were already in rotation, but was ignored. Gather up all the straps and get rid of them. Sir, yes sir. Initially I was instructed to throw them out, but I asked to keep them instead. I was told that they had to leave the premises, one way or the other. So I took them and gave them to a friend of mine for safekeeping. A month later, I have that same manager come up to me asking how many sets of straps we have. I reply with none. He asks about the new ones that had come in. I inform him that they left the premises a month prior as per his instructions. He flies into a panic and is about to berate me for throwing them out when I tell him to relax. I can bring them back in. Bring them back in the next day, no harm and no foul. Certainly bruised that manager's ego a bit and made him think about what he says next time though. Edit grammar. I need to work slower and look busy for the boss? You got it. For background, I have always been an incredibly hard and efficient worker, always getting things done faster than expected and going above and beyond. My program for college required us to go to class for 6 months of the year and work full-time in our field for the remaining 6 months. As a freshman in college, I got my first job at an automotive supplier. My first semester was fairly slow, mainly due to the fact that the person who was supposed to train me went on medical leave my first week there and didn't come back for almost a year and wasn't replaced. However, in my second semester things really took a turn for the worse. Two key things happened at the start of my next semester. One, I was moved to a new department. Two, the company began merging with one of their competitors. Now when the company began the merger, they decided they were going to move everything at my site to the other company's HQ in another nearby city. The first thing that moved was vast majority of the equipment my new department used. The upper management made the brilliant decision to leave the 4 members of my department, 1 supervisor, 1 tech, and 2 students at the old site until the move was complete. This meant we had essentially nothing we could work on. Here's where we get into the MC. After about 2 weeks of sitting around, my supervisor 60F finally came up with a small task for me. I completed this in about 4 hours, which I thought was pretty good for something I had never done and had little training on, so I went to let her know. Me, hey super, I'm done. Super angry and in a panic. Done? This was supposed to take you all week. I don't have anything else for you to do now. I need you to look busy in case boss walks by. Next time I give you something to do, you need to drag it out longer so that you look busy. Now young naive me was initially confused by getting reprimanded for working too fast, but what the boss says goes. A week or so later I was given another task. I was to take thousands of these tiny explosive devices we use and dispose of them by detonating them in a concrete box. They were too volatile to just throw out, so they had to be discharged first. Super, and remember, take your time and don't go through them too fast. Now this was obviously just busy work to get me out of the way, but the great thing with this task was that it had to take place in a back garage that nobody ever went in to avoid the obvious danger of people walking in while I was setting off controlled explosives. I could have easily hooked up 20 of these bad boys at a time and set them off every 5-10 minutes, finishing the whole batch in about a week, but I had to look busy. So instead I set off about 5-10 of these once an hour and spent the rest of the time on my phone playing games, watching Netflix, listening to music, etc. While getting paid over double minimum wage at the time. I managed to stretch that project for the remaining 2.5 months I was there, finishing just in time for the end of the semester. Anytime someone asked me for help on something else, I politely told them I would when I was done, but it might be a while because Super told me not to go through these too fast. They usually ended up finding some other bored student to help them. I think Super genuinely forgot I worked there by the end, because when I stopped into her office in my last week to let her know I had finished the task, she seemed very surprised, confused to see me. The company ended up paying me over $10,000, a lot of money for a student at the time, just to sit on my phone all day for 3 months. I sent an email to supervisor, boss, and HR at the end of the semester letting them know that I would not be returning the next semester. In my best corporate language, I let them know I was leaving to pursue opportunities that would better utilize my time and skills. I found out later, when several of us ran into each other at a job fair, that all but 2 of the other students had also quit at the end of the semester out of boredom and or uncertainty that we would even have jobs to come back to. The company did not handle the transition well and could never give us straight answers about where, when, if we would be brought back. TL Dr. Supervisor tells me to stretch out a small task so that I look busy for the boss and they don't have to find stuff for me to do. Company ends up paying me to sit on my phone for 3 months. Me and most of the other interns end up quitting due to a mismanaged merger. Just clean up? Okay. Shortly after graduating high school, I began working at the Clown Man fast food chain. My first few shifts I was shadowing a trainer, as she was teaching me how to run the front. She clearly would have rather been anywhere else. Once the rush of customers died down and I no longer needed to be at the register, I asked her what my tasks should be. She said I could organize the front counter. I cleaned off the counter pretty quick, as I had already been doing that between customers. So I asked her what else I could do. She rolled her eyes and said, if you see something dirty, clean it, then walked away to chat with some co-workers. Cue malicious compliance. The lobby in front of me was a mess with overflowing trash cans, so I began emptying them and taking them to the back. The lobby was L-shaped, so there was a side which was out of view of the front register. Once I had emptied all the front area cans, I went to the other side. I had emptied 2 of those trash cans, then rounded the corner to find my trainer at the register with a customer. As soon as she saw me, she looked pissed and asked, "Where were you?" I showed her the trash, and she told me to wait in the back for her. A moment later, she appears with a fire under her ass saying, "You are not supposed to abandon your station. What were you doing?" As I was freshly 18 at the time, I meekly told her, "You told me to clean whatever was dirty." She was apparently very offended and told me I needed to drop the attitude, then stormed off to tattle to the manager. It took a moment to collect myself, as I was on the verge of angry tears. Then I made my way back to the front register. The trainer was off to the side talking to co-workers and the manager, clearly complaining about me. As she saw me, she shot me some icy daggers, and then the manager left her to come talk to me. The manager was nice enough and just said, for the future, if there are no customers, clean the front counter even if it's already clean, so you can be there for customers. I thanked her for telling me. In the 4 months of my employment there, I was never scheduled at the same time as that trainer again, until one of my last shifts. I got hired at a government job, so I was very excited to start making some decent money. During one of my last shifts, I guess the trainer had heard I was leaving. She came up to me and not so subtly condescendingly said, "Leaving us so soon, are we?" I played dumb and said, "Yeah, I'm so excited to start working at insert job. It'll be a nice increase of income." The way her face dropped, and the look of angry jealousy that spread across her was priceless. Eat my diss, loser. Just fix the truck. On my first enlistment in the Army, I was a mechanic. In our unit we had 3 staff sergeants for some reason. Sergeant D was on the last year of his contract and would be retiring. He was assigned as the motor supply sergeant, a position that was made up so he could ride the pine since we were overstaffed. Sergeant G was assigned as the maintenance supervisor and oversaw the preventative maintenance and repair of the vehicles in the motor pool. The third one was our platoon sergeant and doesn't feature in the story. Every Monday the vehicle operators would come to the motor pool to perform their weekly vehicle inspections. The mechanics would effect any repairs that were possible at the time, like changing out burnt bulbs, stuff that was easy and could get the vehicle rolling. Then we would begin performing repairs to any vehicle that had a deadline deficiency, a deficiency that needs to be repaired before the vehicle can be operated. These don't necessarily mean the vehicle isn't operational, just that operating the vehicle in that condition can cause greater problems. Then we'd fix the rest. Usually on Friday we'd order any parts that we needed to repair what was left. After the operators left on Monday, The inspection sheets were divvied up between the mechanics and we got to work. One week I had a fairly easy workload and got all of my sheets finished by Wednesday. There was only one vehicle that had a deadline deficiency left and the rest were ordering parts. The vehicle in question had been taken by the operators every day. I called the unit to let them know that the vehicle had a deadline deficiency and needed to return to the motor pool. They were short on vehicles and long on work and had been stalling, so I informed my squad leader and left it at that. I went to the office and began ordering parts. When my work was completed I would assist other mechanics with theirs. Sergeant G walks in and asks why I was in the office and I informed him that the rest of my work was complete and I was ordering parts. He asked to see my inspection sheets and started looking through them. I tried to explain about the one vehicle but he cut me off and said he'd see what the paper said. He saw the deadline deficiency and ordered me out to repair the vehicle immediately. I tried to object and explain the situation but he cut me off again and ordered me to go out and fix the vehicle. I tried a third time to explain. Again he cuts me off and says, "I don't want your fucking excuses. I want your ass out on the line fixing that fucking truck. If I see you doing anything else before it's fixed it'll be an Article 15. An Article 15 is non-judicial punishment and can result in reduction of rank or forfeiture of pay." Roger, Sarge. I'm on it. I walked to the rack of manuals for the vehicles, pulled the appropriate one, and found the size of the bolts on the part that needed changed. Grabbed my wrenches and head out to the assigned spot for the vehicle. I laid down right there, raised my tools and began making wrenching motions with my arms. I did this for over an hour, with some breaks of course. Those were some giant wrenches. I saw people looking at me and pointing. Eventually someone went to Sergeant D and told him what I was doing and he comes over to check it out. He watches me wrenching for a minute or two, head cocked. "What are you doing, squirrel?" "Fixing this truck, Sergeant. It's got a deadline." He was looking at me real funny now like I had heat stroke or something. "Squirrel, you do realize that the truck ain't here, right?" "Sarge, I know this, and you know this, but Sergeant G doesn't want to hear my fucking excuses. He wants my ass out on the line fixing this fucking truck." Sergeant T told me to get up and get back to work. I told him that G had threatened an Article 15. He said he'd take care of it. I took a smoke break to give them time to resolve the issue before I went back to the office. Not sure what Sergeant T said but G had a scowl on his face when I came back to order my parts. "Just print them, chop chop?" "Yes ma'am." Decades and years ago, age about 16. I was working as printer's assistant in print shop. Shop had 2 offset presses, photoplate maker. This was when Frey's camera-ready artwork was in use, equipment for glue binding paper, pads and spiral binding booklets and manuals, big paper cutter, drill press to drill stacks of paper for 3-ring binders, autofolder, etc. Shop, down at car park level, was affiliated with Community Newspaper with offices upstairs in same building, but we did not print newspapers. That was done at proper news printing facility elsewhere. Print shop was to bring additional revenue for newspaper, crucial to story to cater for busy work. Arts and crafts, hobby businesses of wives and mistresses and sisters and daughters of newspaper men whose busy work is mostly about drinking. Newspaper men were mostly unpleasant. Wives and mistresses and sisters and daughters were mostly more so, making pathetic pretense of living lifestyles of rich and famous as though associated with Times of London or Le Monde or New York Times or other real newspaper, instead of nothing little village gazette. One such today would be described as perfect Karen. Came into print shop one day with artwork for print job. Her make-work hobby was making and selling frilly little soup making mixes in crinkly cellophane bags tied up with lacy ribbons. She had new kind of soup mix for stracciatella, Italian wedding soup, little star-shaped bits of pasta, herbs and seasonings, etc. This woman was screechy and insistent and abrasive. "This is rush order. Suspend all other orders and do hers now, or she will have word with Village Gazette managing editor about us, so chop chop." She holds out artwork. Duran printer reaches to accept. She deliberately drops on counter just before Duran would close hand. Duran picks up from counter and asks if she wishes proofreading. She sneers artwork is camera ready, is perfect, does not need editing or proofing, no wasting time or padding bill. Then flounces out from shop. "Very well. This is expensive, complicated order. Multicolor label tag. Multi passes through press, gloss coat, cut, fold, drill. First step is to make plates. I am tasked to make plates, 1 for each ink color. Great effort is put into controlling registration each ink color printed in correct location relative to all other locations, so finished label looks as though printed in one pass. Labels are printed multi-up on sheets of expensive fancy cardstock, then cut and trimmed, then auto-folded. More precision set up from rectangle into 4-sided square label tag front, inside front, inside back, back. Last step before boxing is to drill single hole in upper left corner, for frilly ribbons to tie label to crinkly cellophane bag. This too I am tasked with. Involves setting up corner jig on table of drill press, stacking, folded labels and ramming against jig, then drilling, 50 at a time. I am just about to lower spinning drill to first stack of 50 when I stop, switch off drill press, and say Duran, how do you spell stracciatella? Duran is very adept. Quick copy editor. He immediately calls out stracciatella. I get big grin on face and say, yes, this is how I spell stracciatella, too. Duran, quickly beginning to suspect, says, why do you ask? I raise my voice to imitate Mrs. Karen. Artwork is camera ready, is perfect, does not need editing or proofing, no wasting time or padding bill. Duran now shares my big grin and looks sideways at me. I hold up undrilled top label. Like all others in large stacks next to drill press, it reads stracciatella. Now is Duran's turn to raise voice. Artwork is camera ready, is perfect, does not need editing or proofing, no wasting time or padding bill. He, now laughing, points at drill press and tells me to get busy on finishing important rush order. I drill and drill and drill, many stacks of many labels. These are neatly boxed up, and boxes neatly stacked on front counter. Duran calls woman to advise order is ready for pickup. She arrives shortly later, examines labels, says something to effect of, see how easy when you just do as you are told, pays, and leaves with labels. Proofreading would have been free, and fix could have been made, also free, with few moments time even with literal cut and paste. Artwork is camera ready, is perfect, does not need editing or proofing, no wasting time or padding bill. See how easy when you just do as you are told? Mother told me I'm a narcissistic nobody. Hello all. I 21 meters have been doing a ton of soul searching recently, and realized that my family is incredibly toxic and damaging. This all stems from my mother 44F, who is overtly abusive and callous. She's the reason my sister couldn't finish high school because I say this. Looking back, abuse effing sucks and she just couldn't hold it all together. She put my little sister on a throne, and since I was Ray middle child I became the scapegoat, and that was and is our family. According to them, she has spent the majority of my life mentally, physically, emotionally, etc., abusing me, constantly telling me I'm a nobody and that I'm self-centered and selfish, as well as that I deserve nothing. Now you're probably wondering where the malicious compliance comes in. No? Well, this upcoming Christmas I have plans to completely cut ties with her and my family as a whole, and I even got some small gifts to celebrate it. Lol. I got a card for my mom that says you're my inspiration, that I'll proceed to fill with all of the nasty things I want to say to her. It fill it with things she did to me, but let's be honest, she doesn't care. As for my siblings, since they decided to take my mother's stance when it comes to how to perceive me, I'll give them something to remember as well. This may be more petty revenge, but if the shoe fits, I've spent my life trying to compensate for the selfish person I am, when in truth I'm one of the most selfless and genuinely caring people you will ever meet. But as of now, consider me a devil's spawn with no empathy or concern to those around me. You wanted a narcissistic son that only thinks about himself and what benefits him? Yo, got it. And I hope it's everything she ever wished for, because it's the last thing she'll ever get out of me. I think this Churchmas will be the best one I've ever had. Lol, maybe that makes me a bad person or a sadist, but I'm okay with that. I'm not trying to be a good guy. I want to be free from their lifelong abuse and give them a taste of what it's like to have someone give up on you. Happy holidays, Redditors, and thanks for reading. SB, if this is the wrong thread, please. LMK, I'm kinda new to Reddit as a whole. Edit, also sorry for typos. I did this kinda fast and I'm a little tired. Plus it's 6 AM where I am and I'm not gonna proofread RN. My chair doesn't meet HS. It's war. TLDR, boss made me get rid of my custom desk chair. Now they have to order me a completely new workstation setup. I'm a teacher. I made a cool desk chair out of a car seat in the base of the old one that was falling apart. Used hardware I had laying around, so cost almost nothing. My custom chair was super comfy, ergonomic, fully adjustable, lumbar support, and better than the piece of crap I had before. Also environmentally friendly. Reduce, reuse, recycle. Anyway, my tool of a principal sees it one day, murmurs something about how unusual it looks. A few weeks later, she comes around saying it's not health and safety compliant. I have to get rid of it and they will order a brand new one. Okay, fine, I'm getting a new chair. New one arrives and it's another cheap one that only has height adjustment and nothing else. Probably fall apart in a couple of years. So not HS compliant. I called the HR department and asked them to do a workplace evaluation. They came in today. Findings were that my desk is too small, the chair lacks proper adjustments, and the board-issued 14 laptops are not suitable for my needs. In order to be compliant, the HR rep is getting another new chair, large flat screen monitor, keyboard, mouse, And even a desk that can be adjusted for sitting and standing. Principal had to sit there with a face like fizz while HR outlined all the reasons why my workstation setup wasn't HS compliant. Chair not HS compliant? Well, what about everything else? No idea how much this will cost. The principal is a notorious tight arse. She'll be regretting getting in between a man's arse and comfort. Edit car chair and new HS compliant one. Imgur. Not one word. Back in college, I was hoping to date Sarah. Sarah had a roommate Layla who was dating Tom. We all generally got along, but Layla was a real drama queen. Self-absorbed, everything was about her, and her response to any perceived slight was always over the top. Layla definitely had Karen qualities even while still in college. I can't imagine how much worse she got with age and experience. The four of us spent a bit of time together, but I eventually realized Sarah was just stringing me along. On that day, I was primed by my frustration over Sarah's indecision and Layla was having another one of her frequent over-the-top meltdowns about something stupid. I started to offer some commentary, but Layla put up her index finger to shush me. Layla, not one word. Baka. Not one word. If you didn't catch it at the top, Bakatari my username. In that one crystal moment of mental clarity I realized that I was tired of putting up with Layla's bullshit just to spend time with Sarah, especially when Sarah clearly wasn't going to commit. It just wasn't worth the headache anymore. You don't want me to say one word, Layla? Not one word? Okie dokie, dearie. Challenge accepted. I looked her in the eyes and gave every impression that I was caving to her demand, then quietly and calmly said me fuck. You. Layla acted like she was going to jump off the couch and attack me. Tom quickly wrapped her up while she yowled and struggled like an angry cat, though not struggling quiet enough that she'd actually get free of him. It was very obviously a hold me back moment. Bridge burned. I just walked away from all of them for good. I don't think I said two more words to any of them the rest of my time at university. Packing details matter. When we were packing, I numbered all the boxes and used color-coded labels for each and had a running inventory sheet for each box. I packed the entire house by myself. Well, the kids helped with their toys. My husband didn't do the garage till I forced him to. I kept asking him what's in the box so I could list and number it so we knew what was in it. He lost patience and said, "There are wrenches, screwdrivers and shit like that, dear." He does this for multiple boxes, saying things like it doesn't matter, it just needs to be packed. And never mind the list, the movers are going to be here soon, etc. etc. So I dutifully write this down. Cue the malicious non-compliance. Fast forward. We are moved into and renovating the new house. We are beyond stressed because there are birders and wallpaper that were applied by Satan, which delayed painting, which delayed carpet, etc. Hubby is looking for a specific tool. Asks me what's in a specific numbered box. I can give him specific details, but tell him, that's orange, which is kitchen. You need blue, which is the garage. So he goes over to the boxes labeled in blue with the garage stuff in it. There's a pretty big pile. He knows that I can find stuff in the boxes I packed and asks which box is the tool he wants in. I tell him he didn't give me a lot of detail. He points to a box and tells me to read out what's in the box. I read out wrenches, screwdrivers and shit like that, dear. He gets a little annoyed and asks about the next one. I say it doesn't matter, it just needs to be packed. I handed him my log, and just told him that's what he gets for not cooperating. He had to go through about 20 boxes to find the right one. Show me what's in your pants, okay? This story was just told to me by my amazing Haitian grandma. She's not the greatest at speaking English, so some of this might have been a little lost in translation. We were listening to r/ and the topic of periods came up and how some people are low-key uneducated. I was telling her stories about how some girls weren't allowed to go to the bathroom by male teachers even on their periods, and she told me this gem. She said that she was in the DR for vacation and was shopping at a store. Now, she said was bigger than she is now, and that she was wearing a skirt. She was, of course, on her period and was wearing a pad. It apparently was poking out the front a little. The store clerk had told the women to come to the front and had maybe noticed the bulge on my grandma. The interaction went something like this: SC, hey, what are you hiding? I'm your pants. G, nothing. SC, ma'am, I can see you smuggling something. I'm going to have to call security if you don't tell me right now. G, okay. Call them. The store clerk obliged and call security. They came shortly after and talked to my grandma. S, ma'am, what are you hiding? G, I already said, I'm not hiding anything. S, you're lying. Show me. At this point, Grandma was getting fed up and just decided to follow his instructions. She pulled on her underwear and ripped that shit off and placed it on his hand, blood exposed and all. The man apparently was appalled and screamed WTF? WTF is that, and starting screaming. Other customers had come and questioned why they would think she could smuggle something in a skirt. Lamau, Grandma just paid for her shit and left like the boss she is. Sorry, you told me to leave you alone. When I was around 15 or 16, A friend and I went to the local mall on the weekend to hang out and hit the arcade. After a bit we decided to get a drink at the food court. While we were standing in line, an older man, late 30s or early 40s, looking like he just got out of the gym, decided to cut in the line in front of us. The line was fairly long at this point, around 10 deep. They had the best lemonade in the mall. I tapped him on the shoulder and said, "Sir, we're in line here." He shot us a look and turned back around, pretty much ignoring the fact that we were there. When he got nearer to the register, he reached into his pocket to take out his wallet. As he did so, a wad of cash fell onto the floor unnoticed by him. As rude as he was, I was raised to be courteous and respectful. I picked up the cash and said, "Excuse me, sir." At which point he replied, without even turning to look at me, "Shut up and leave me the fuck alone." I turned back to look at the older gentleman behind us, who just smiled and shrugged. So I placed the cash in my pocket. When it was time for him to pay, he opened his wallet to discover that there was no cash in it. He quickly turned and scanned the floor. When he didn't find the money, he asked us if we'd seen him drop it. My friend said, "Can't help you. We were told to shut up and leave you the fuck alone." He was a bit spicy, he ranted, but in the end he walked away without his money. Turned out there was $147 in there. A nice haul for a broke kid in the early 90s. Another time, when I was just a little older, I had gone to Wally World. I purchased something fairly inexpensive and paid the cashier. She handed me back around $87 in change. I said, "Ma'am, I think you gave me the wrong change." She looked at it and told me that she had it right. I responded, "But ma'am." She cut me off, spitting mad, and went into a rant about how she was very good at math. I let her finish and simply said, "Okay, sorry to bother you, ma'am." I then took my leave. I wonder how she felt about her math skills when she counted her drawer after her shift. What I was trying to tell her was that I had paid with a 20, not a Benjamin. Take notes of everything you say in the meeting? Okay, but it will get you fired. So this happened a few years ago, and I will be vague since I'm still not sure if the dust has fully settled from this fiasco yet. At my former company, I was the secretary for a small improvement team that would meet monthly to discuss issues within the company and brainstorm ways to fix them. Something you need to know about me is that I was given this role because people know I am meticulous at keeping records due to HR-related issues I had at a previous place of employment. I don't think my boss realized that this careful record-keeping applied to her as well, especially when she appointed me to be secretary of this little committee. But I digress. I was a model employee, Red Award-winning, and went above and beyond what was asked, as were many others in my department. But we were still having customer complaints and dealt with regular safety issues, due to the company at large and through no fault of our own. When we brought these concerns to our boss's attention, emails were left unread, and during in-person exchanges, we were called whiny, needy, and were told that we needed to just deal with it. Whatever the issue, from items being stolen by customers to people being unhappy with the procedures the boss had set down for us to follow, it was always made to somehow be our fault. When we sought support from other departments, we were met with cold indifference, since the boss was great to them, and we must be exaggerating the things she said to us. Well, during an improvement meeting at the end of the fiscal year, it all came to a head. Myself and a couple of my team members dug our heels in and were insistent about the unresolved issues the boss refused to acknowledge, and she finally went off on us. She told us everyone was incompetent, didn't deserve our jobs, and that maybe customers would like us more if we were more likable. When people pressed her on safety issues, she continued to reiterate that we would just have to deal with it, and that if someone was going to die, they already would have, right? I, as the secretary, did my duty and took notes of all that happened over the course of that meeting. I usually did bullet points, but that night, I was feeling a little more thorough, so I wrote down words. Every word that was said, every hateful comment, denial of accountability, and idle threat was recorded in black and white. Now, a second part of my job was to distribute the notes from the improvement meeting to the rest of the company. So, come the next morning, I ran about 100 copies of the transcript of the meeting and hand-delivered them to every single department in the building, and things blew up. People from other departments who had attended the meeting were able to verify that everything I had typed up had really been said, and folks were mad, threatening to quit, refusing to do their normal duties, browsing Indeed during work, etc. My boss's boss, who worked at HQ, so I didn't get the opportunity to hand her a copy, got wind of these meeting minutes only a few hours after I had handed them out, and had an hour-long, off-the-record conversation with me about all the safety issues I had documented, all the concerns I had submitted to management in writing, and all the records I had regarding my boss's inaction. She was very grateful for the 100 pages of documentation I sent over and thanked me for my time. The day after I unleashed Pandora's box, I put in my 2 weeks' notice, took a new job, and pieced out to greener pastures. At first, it seemed like things were calming down after I left, But the following year, the company did not renew my boss's contract. I still feel a bit bad because I wasn't trying to get her fired or ruin her life. I was just desperate for some accountability thrown her way to create some positive change in the company. But at the end of the day, I just did what she had asked me to do. The boss wants me to stand in the corner? Okay, years ago, I was a photographer at a major theme park and worked with the characters on an almost daily basis. Our famous character is a mouse that owns the whole park. Everyone who worked there either referred to him as Boss or Mr. Mouse around guests. For the purposes of this post, I'll refer to him as Boss. One morning, I was assigned to work with the boss. He was in a mischievous mood and being an overall goofball. I enjoyed this and so did our guest's character attendants. One of his favorite things to do when he was in a mischievous mood was try to pass me the autograph books he had signed, conveniently ignoring the fact that I had my hands full with a camera. As I went to take them, he'd drop them and run away, making a laughing motion. So we're with this family and boss does his usual pass the autograph books to the photographer stunt. He holds them out expectantly and I said I'd love to, boss, but you know I don't know my ABCs. At this, the boss drops the books, takes my hand, moves me to a corner, and points to the floor, telling me to stay like I was a naughty child. Malicious compliance mode activated. Okay, I guess I'm grounded, I said, pouting. Everyone at this point is howling with laughter, even our head manager Diane who had stepped in to watch. So boss continues his interaction with the family. Now at the end of the session, we have the family pose with the character. So boss gets everyone together and poses with the popular Tata Snow photographer. After a moment, the boss motions to the family to wait and stomps over to my corner. I'm fighting back a grin at this point as he turns me around, points to my camera and then held his hands up as if to say what gives. Boss, you told me I'm grounded, remember? I said with a sweet innocent smile. It's at this point Diane pipes in with that you did, Mr. Mouse. Boss playfully drags me back to my spot and poses again. We get the photo and send the family on their way. Diane stepped out with them and offered to send them through again to get more pictures because I didn't take many on account of me being grounded. The family, the dad who had tears in his eyes at this point said it was the hardest he's laughed in a long time. To this day, it still brings a smile to my face. The Legend of the Window Washers. This story was told to me by Belle, a friend of mine who is a retired Army officer and takes place during the late 90s to early 00s when she was a second LT. This story is more unintentional malicious compliance than anything else. A fresh batch of second LTs had arrived when the story starts. Among this group is a young man who had the misfortune of being nicknamed Dum Dum when he was a cadet after the lollipop, because he liked to eat them. The man was a skilled software engineer and became popular because he was friendly, helpful and personable. Unfortunately, he wasn't the shrillest whistle on the football field. Not a lot of common sense. One time, he punched himself in the face when told to beat his face aka do push-ups. When the others realized this, they made sure to make orders clear. Unfortunately, this story is about one of the times when someone forgot about that. One day, word arrives that a general is coming to the base. Because of this, Colonel Stone, the same one who reamed out a major's wife for threatening Belle's rank, was in a particularly foul mood. Wanting to avoid getting chewed out, Belle volunteers to run several errands. After finishing, she's passing a building when she sees an odd sight. There, standing on another second LT's shoulders was Dum Dum and he was holding a bucket and sponge. Belle sees the Dum Dum is washing the windows while the other second LT, let's designate him Stepstool, was balancing him, holding onto his ankles. According to Belle, it was like watching a car wreck. You know you should look away but you just can't. She hears Stone stop next to her, also with a befuddled look on his face. It's at this moment that Stepstool notices that they have an audience and stumbles. This causes Dum Dum to lose his balance and he falls to the ground, causing a bloody nose. Belle and Stone get splashed by soapy water from the bucket. All three second LTs stand to attention. What are you two idiots doing? Stone asked. We were ordered to wash the windows on the second floor for the general, sir. Dum Dum said. Why didn't you get a ladder? Stone asked. We weren't ordered to use a ladder, sir. We were just told to get it done. Stone stared for 10 seconds, stern as his namesake, before walking around the building. It's then they hear him laughing hysterically. Everyone is staring at one another, not sure how to react. After a minute, Stone comes back, calm as can be. Who gave you the order to wash the windows? First LT literal, sir. Go to medical and get that bloody nose checked out. Help them get a ladder, Smith, when they're cleared. And don't do that again, you too. Yes, sir. After getting cleared by medical, Dum Dum was fine. Belle helps them get a ladder and returns to work. By the end of the day, word had spread and Belle got the full story. It turned out that literal, who was also in a foul mood, had snapped a Dum-Dum and Steps tool to go wash the windows on the second floor when they asked him how they could help. When asked how they could reach the second floor, literal who really wanted to get them out his hair told them, "I don't care how, just get it done. And don't bother anyone until you two get it done." He later apologized to Dum-Dum and Stepstool. Quietly, of course, Dum-Dum and Stepstool finished their chore and the general's arrival went well. From that day forward, Dum-Dum and Stepstool were known as the window washers. The procedure. Hello there, first time posting, but today I was hit by an MC. I know my account is new, and I created it just to post this. The other account might be a bad influence. For some context, I work in a major telecoms company in Brazil, in the centralized infrastructure team, and we use a tool by another software organization to manage our service orders. And our activities range from refueling gases diesel generators, to soldering and replenishing cooling gas in big air conditioning systems, just to keep the equipment responsible for the data and signal running in any climate condition except for flooding, hurricane and etc. To keep and register these orders, we have a bunch of procedures that only ad can change, so that we need to jump through a bunch of hoops to not compromise the process in the auditing phase of the year. Last month we asked the support from ad to include some other evidences in the script followed by our technicians to fulfill an order of refueling a generator, and they did, by the letter, what we asked. A month later, in my emotionally unstable boss story for another sub demanded we change the title of this new evidence filed from complete generator attached mobile to complete generator, removing the sentence in the brackets. Cue the MC, so I filed a request for the change of name, and followed up with a call so that this request gets done quickly. Sometimes they take months, and in my talk over the phone with the support guy I tried to be very diligent and said we need to get the brackets part out, and just leave the other sentence, and he only heard the first half and complied. In the afternoon, minutes before a meeting to update the new change for the boss, a team member checked the change and saw that the support guy only removed the brackets from the entire title, leaving it like complete generator attached mobile. We stayed facing each other in shock, and scrambled to call back there to talk to someone again to fix this thing, and then started laughing hard about the panic and the utter compliance on the first instruction we gave to support. In the end the meeting got cancelled and we have a correct procedure title now. Thank and sorry if any part didn't make sense. English is not my first language and writing is the bane of my existence. You want me to get the attention of your husband's CO? It's your funeral. So over the past few days, I've become friends with a retired army officer that I'll call Belle. She's been delighting me with stories of her service and she shared this wonderful story that I think you all will enjoy. Names and some details have been changed to protect the innocent. Belle was a young second LT at her first posting. As she put it, my college diploma hadn't even arrived in the mail and I was scared as hell. Fortunately, she got on the NCO's good side and settled in pretty nicely. One afternoon, she was at work when in storms an officer's wife, looking like she was in the mood to cause hell. Belle keeps her head down, trying to stay busy when she hears the dreaded words, "I'm talking to you, soldier." Belle looked up and saw the woman, let's call her Karen because why not, standing in front of her. "Can I help you, ma'am?" Belle asked. "Yeah, I'm Major McKim's important's wife and I need to speak to Colonel Stone." "Do you have an appointment?" "He's busy," Belle asked. "Just go get him. I'll stand right here until you do." Belle looks around, wondering what the hell she's supposed to do. She didn't want to risk her job because Colonel Stone was known around the base for having a fierce temper. "I'll have you knocked back down to private if you don't do as I say," Karen shouts. "Now move." Wanting to get away, Belle got up and walked towards the colonel's office, intending to get away for a long enough coffee break that Karen will forget. When she looked back, she sees Karen is watching her like a hawk, so there goes that plan. Colonel Stone's door is closed and Belle knocks on the door. "Yes?" Colonel Stone barked. "Sir, it's Second LT Belle Smith," she said. "Come in." Belle opens the door, does the customary salute, and he immediately notices how nervous she is. "What is it?" "Major McKim's so important's wife is here and she wants to speak to you," Belle said, her voice squeaking. "Does she have an appointment?" "She just said to go get you and she wouldn't leave until you saw her." "I see. Did she threaten to knock you down to private?" "She did." Colonel Stone nodded and then said in a voice that scared Belle, "Send her in." Belle salutes and then goes back to Karen. Karen looks absolutely smug. "He'll see you now," Belle said. "See? Now that wasn't so hard, was it?" Karen said, strolling over to the colonel's office. It's at this point that a first sergeant named Sanders comes in. He just sits down and as the office door closes, he counts down in a low voice. "What the hell were you thinking?" Colonel Stone shouted. For a good 5 minutes, he proceeded to tear Karen a new butthole, telling her that she isn't permitted to wear her husband's rank, and that if she tries pulling anything like that ever again, Her husband will be busted down to private faster than he could sneeze. Karen left the office like a bat out of hell, white as a sheet and quaking. Bell never saw her again, but she and the major got divorced shortly afterwards. According to Bell, he realized what a liability she'd be to his career. Thieves? I'm a physician. My coworker is a physician. We practice nephrology somewhere in the USA. We do a lot visits to dialysis centers along an interstate, 8 of them. And it involves a lot of driving to see the patients while they're on dialysis. The system we work for pays us mileage plus a good salary. Originally we submitted our own mileage reports and they always approved them. We were not trying to maximize the money. We both just wanted about $1,000 a month to offset wear and tear and gas on the vehicle. We were actually just photocopying the same report each month, signing it and turning it in. The original company we worked for was totally fine with this arrangement. Well, the system got bought by another system, who apparently believes all their doctors are thieves. We were told we were scamming them, and from now on a middle manager would be reviewing our billings and using Google Maps to calculate out our mileage each month for us. And this person would make sure we were adhering strictly to their policy for reimbursement. Starts from the office each day no matter where you started from, doesn't pay you to drive out somewhere if you didn't see a patient but just want to sign forms for nurses, and other stupidity. Now I don't like being accused of thievery, especially when I was sure we'd been underbilling for the mileage just to keep things easy and simple. These people don't know me, but I had an Excel sheet with all my patients, their clinics, and a schedule to drive out to them and see them all in as little time and mileage as possible. It was really efficient. So I dove into their travel policy and reconfigured my schedule. Not to minimize mileage, but, within their policy, to maximize it. As a bonus, the new schedule actually has me home each day for lunch on days I sew dialysis round, so it saved me a little bit of money and improved my mood. For example, since they started from the office and ended from the office no matter where you actually start and end, I start my day at the one close to my house but far from the office, and end my day at the one on the other side of town by my girlfriend's house, where I'd usually hang out after work anyway. Midday I'd go home for lunch, get a nap or nooner, and then see a couple people in town, so I'd get paid to drive back, and then head out for the regular visits that day. Altogether, my average mileage, far from being less like they expected, is actually 90 greater. And on top of this, they're paying this middle manager to deep dive into all our billing, to examine the locations and compile the report. She said just to do or two it takes almost 8 hours, an expense they never had before. What are you going to do about it? Call the cops? I was explaining to my mom what malicious compliance was, and she reminded me of this story. I was a senior in high school when all of a sudden I got sick at school and had to be sent home. Because my car was in the shop, Mom had to come get me. It's about 9:30 a.m. when this happened. As we're driving up a very busy street, we see 2 7-8-year-old kids, we'll call them Frank and Zelda, trying to cross. Worried, Mom pulls over to see what's going on. The conversation went roughly as follows. Mom: kids, are you guys okay? What are you two doing here? Frank: drive. Idiot said we couldn't come to school early, so he sent us home. Now Mom is very familiar with drive. Idiot: he was the principal at the elementary school my younger brother was attending at the time. My brother, Mark, was going through some behavioral issues at the time, and Mom was commonly called to the point they were on a first-name basis. Not that he allowed her to use his first name, because I have a doctorate in education, so it's Dr. Idiot. So in other words, he was an entitled idiot. There was a gas station 10 feet away, so Mom tells Frank and Zelda to meet us there. We pulled in, got some water for the kids, as it was a hot day, and Mom calls Drive Idiot's cell phone. Again, the conversation went roughly as follows. Idiot: this is Drive Idiot. Mom: hi, this is Mark's mom. I have 2 kids here named Frank and Zelda, and they say they were sent home early. Idiot: yes, their parents dropped them off at 6 a.m. because they had to work something about mandatory overtime. Of course we're not a daycare, so I just told the kids to go home and wait for the bus. Mom: are you kidding me? We're 5 miles away from the school. They walked all that way. It's a wonder they weren't hit by a car or kidnapped. Idiot: what are you going to do about it? Call the cops? Click. Mom was absolutely floored, but she decided to give Drive Idiot a nice dose of reality. At the time, we lived in a small town. How small? So small that sometimes the chief of police would have to walk the beat. And that day, he happened to be a block or so away from the gas station. When he got the call, he arrived, got the whole story, from not only Frank and Zelda but from Mom and me. And, being a father of 2 elementary-aged kids himself, he was pissed. He looked at Mom and said, Chief of Police, it's time I had some words with Drive Idiot. The chief of police drove Frank and Zelda to the school in the squad car, which they were super excited about, personally escorted them to their class, and then marched to Drive Idiot's office and proceed to tear him a new butthole, telling Drive Idiot that he'd helped the parents press charges on him for child other things. From that day on, Drive. Idiot allowed Frank and Zelda to be at the school early on the days their parents had mandatory overtime. Update. So I got some details from mom about why Frank and Zelda were just dropped off at school. Their aunt works at the elementary school and had agreed to watch them until school started a couple of hours later. She wasn't on the clock. Frank and Zelda didn't live in a good part of town and their parents understandably didn't feel their kids would be safe if they were alone. If Dr. Idiot had driven them home to wait for the bus, it wouldn't have gotten on the chief of police's nerves. Update 2 is for why the aunt didn't see the kids. The parents dropped the kids off 10 minutes before the aunt arrived and Drive. Idiot assured them that he'd watch the kids for the 10 minutes. Once they were gone, he told the kids to scram. When the aunt got there, she came in a different direction, so she didn't see them. He told her that the kids hadn't been dropped off. Since they were at work, workplace was very anal about cell phone usage. She had no way to reach them to confirm that. She had no freaking clue what really happened until the chief of police turned up with the kids in tow. And yes, I have no idea how Drive Idiot kept his job. Won't pay out my PTO? Well, can I take PTO and work? At my last job I'd given them notice, and I had assumed they'd cut me a check for the 55 hours of PTO I had left over, but no, they said I would lose it if I don't use it. So I went ahead and used my PTO for the last 55 hours I was scheduled to work because I wasn't about to waste that. But then I remembered a time a few weeks back I had taken PTO, but then I had worked about 30 minutes into my PTO. I ended up earning time and a half. As with my PTO 30 minutes of extra work, I enjoyed my co-workers. I sent an email to my manager, hey Mark, I know we are a bit understaffed and I know I took PTO already, but I wouldn't mind working anyway. Is that okay to work? Mark responds, yes, we'd be happy to have you. My hourly rate was $25 at $25 at that point. Time and half puts me at $37.50, which I was fine with earning. So come my second hour of Thursday I will be earning time and half. So I worked, had fun. Come Monday after my last day, my old boss calls me and says, did you work 135 hours last pay period? No, I worked 80 hours, and I used 55 hours of PTO cause, like your overtime pay put us over budget. I said yay, that did say I was good to work despite the fact I had scheduled PTO, right? Hey I did. Yay. Thanks. He starts laughing. Yes, I got paid. Company now pays out PTO and you quit cause of me. In the end they paid me $2,062 in overtime pay plus the 80 hours I worked earned me $2,000. So typically 80 hours of work would cost them $2,000. But because they wouldn't pay me out my PTO, they ended up paying double, when they could have just cut me a check for $1,375 and saved $700. Essentially, in their effort to rip me off my benefit, I made them pay $700 for their greed. I made sure to get permission to come to work, despite the fact that I had already scheduled my PTO. FYI, previously in another interaction I was told once PTO can't be cancelled. Edit: in my state not paying out for PTO is perfectly legal and fine. In my company PTO is treated in terms of pay the same as hours worked, so in a bi-weekly pay period I'm scheduled to work 80 hours 40 hours per week. I noticed if overtime pay went above 40 hours I still got paid time and a half. So here's the math. I was supposed to work 80 hours. I had 55 hours of PTO to use. So I took all of that, which mean I was going work 25 hours, and take off 55 hours. Now instead of taking those 55 hours, I worked them, but I was still using PTO. So I got my $25 for my 80 hours, and then I got $37.50 per hour for my 55 hours. This resulted in a gross pay of $4,062 had the company simply wrote me a check for my PTO that would have been $1,375, plus my 80 hours would have been $2,000 for a total of $3. The company basically paid me $700 more than they could have because they were trying to be greedy. You suspended me for 7 days, not 6. Kinda long, but I'll make it as short as possible. So, for context, this happened back in 2015-2016. I'm a single mom, 23F, at the time, only had a young son to tend to. So, I was waitressing at a restaurant that I will call East End for this story that was in the heart of the rough area of our town, but a major success due to the support of our community. Area-wide parties we were known for throwing. It even resulted in another restaurant being built on the West Coast. However, behind the scenes, our best-known secret was that our checks would never clear. Cashing them anywhere was always an issue due to mismanagement of funds. They even put $0 on my W-2 form even though I put back funds from each supposed check, which I think is illegal. Throughout this, I stayed faithful to them, worked hard, almost daily, bringing my son with me from lack of childcare. I even worked an entire month from 9 a.m. to sometimes 3 a.m. I was eventually made top waitress, got a $1.25 raise, which wasn't much on waitress pay, but still, every penny counted. But soon, the owner passed the company down to his son. When his son took over, everything was okay until he hired 2 employees. I'll call them Tina, an older female, Leah, an old schoolmate. So over time, I noticed that my boss's son started getting closer to them, to a point where they were hanging out after work. Then, one day, a meeting occurred to where they both named managers even though I had 2 years of seniority, top sales. My job title, pay raise were both taken. As if that was not heartbreaking enough, my work ethics started getting picked apart by them, especially Tina, who would call me a table hog, not a team player, even though I brought in the most sales. So finally, the last straw came on an event night. I had worked the entire lunch rush that day, was asked to cover the late shift since they knew I knew how to work it. Tina decided to make me the register waitress, meaning I could only work the front bar door, not take tables. "You made enough money for today," she said with a snark, walked off. Now my family happened to walk and requested for me to host their table. There was a rule saying that if a certain worker was requested, that worker would take it. But my manager was upset by this because she had to work front in my place. By the end of the night, she pulled up the computer. The following conversation happens: "Tina, what did you do for this table?" Me, confused, angry, who is questioning my orders? Tina, taken aback, I was wanting to see was what you did for them worth being suspended for a week. I had no choice but to work one. As a manager, I am supposed to just sit back, observe everything to make sure things go right. Me, excuse me? You know the rule. But you know what? Whatever. Fuck this. I stormed out in tears. The next day, I go in for my check when I notice on the schedule that I was only suspended for 6 days, scheduled to work on the 7th day for a huge part that was supposed to happen. Cue malicious compliance. I went directly to the boss, told him I thought I was suspended for 7 days, not 6, had plans for that day which I didn't umbo. My boss saw this, pointed it out to Tina, who had no choice but to enforce my suspension. That night I drove by, the streets were packed. I blew the horn, waved. The staff told me that due to poor planning of suspension of her best server being short-staffed, she struggled to find coverage, was yelled at by the boss for her poor leadership. She had to work it herself. I found a job that week, quit, told them that my 2 weeks notice was when they would notice I wasn't coming back. You want lesson plans? You asked for it. Once upon a time in the quaint town of Academia, a new middle school assistant principal was placed at our school. One day, trying to impress the school principal, our assistant, Mr. Sternsworth, as we will call him, decided to crack down on the teacher's lesson planning process. Mr. Sternsworth, a stern man with a penchant for punctuality, issued a decree that all teachers must submit their lesson plans, detailed, on the form he provided, that took way longer due to formatting and other demands, and wanted them promptly every Monday at 8 a.m. for the upcoming week. The teachers grumbled and complained, as this takes a lot of time. We could be prepping for the lesson, but we had little choice but to comply with the Sternsworth's wishes. I, however, saw an opportunity for a little mischief. Determined to make a point, I not only submitted the lesson plans diligently every Monday at the specified time, but took it a step further. Along with each lesson plan, I attached a friendly email, politely requesting feedback on the plans and any suggestions for improvement. Dear Mr. Sternsworth, I hope this email finds you well. Attached are my lesson plans for the upcoming week. I would greatly appreciate any feedback or suggestions you might have. Thank you for your time. Sincerely, AMLT 1983. At first, Mr. Sternsworth was pleased to see such diligence from me. However, as the weeks went by, the inbox of the assistant principal began to overflow with my meticulously detailed lesson plans and polite follow-up emails. It seemed that every lesson plan submission was accompanied by a prompt for feedback. At first, Mr. Sternsworth tried to keep up. He skimmed through a few lesson plans, offering generic feedback like "looks good" or "keep it up," but I was persistent. I pushed for more feedback. The flood of emails requesting feedback became overwhelming, and Mr. Sternsworth found himself spending more time responding to me than actually performing his administrative duties. Frustrated and desperate to put an end to the constant barrage of emails, Mr. Sternsworth called me into his office. AMLT 1983, he said with a weary sigh, I appreciate your enthusiasm, but I simply don't have the time to provide detailed feedback on every lesson plan. Can't you just submit them without all the extra emails? Smirking, I replied, sorry sir, I'm just a guy who wants to get better. I'm trying to make lesson plans that are really engaging. I really need the feedback. I'd hate to get doc on my end-of-year evaluation for being anything but the best. After a heavy sigh, Mr. Sternsworth said, AMLT 1983, if you stop emailing me about them, I won't make you turn any more in. It is obvious you are a good teacher, and I need to focus on other things. That was 12 years ago, and I haven't turned in a lesson plan since. You're my battle buddy. That means we look out for each other and you're not to leave my side. Got that?
Yes, sir.
This is my friend. Belle's story and takes place in the mid-90s when Belle was a senior in high school. Belle had a cantankerous great uncle named Todd. Like many people in Belle's family, Uncle Todd had served in the army. After being honorably discharged, he took up the family's homestead and worked as a farmer while the rest of the family lived in town about 20 miles away. Uncle Todd was a real old salt. And when I say salt, I don't mean salt of the earth. I mean saltier than a sailor. He was the kind of person who would sit on the front porch with his shotgun and a box of salt pellets waiting for any neighbor kids to try and steal from his prized apple orchard. Needless to say, you were either on his good side or his bad side. Most of the family were, sadly, on his bad side. Somehow, Belle got on the old man's good side early on in life and he didn't give her near as much grief. When she showed him her letter from West Point, he had tears in his eyes. Beginning when she was a freshman in high school, she was hired to help him out as he was getting up in age. Every day, before sunup, he'd pick her up in his battered old Ford pickup and drive her to the farm. Every time they arrived, he'd tell her, "You're my battle buddy. That means we look out for each other and you're not to leave my side. Got that?" She'd snap a salute and say, "Yes, sir." They'd get about their day and at the end, Uncle Todd would drive her home and pay her for the day for a job well done and treat her to a Coke and a sandwich from the town grocery store. Belle has many fond memories of that old man. That being said, there were some days that he'd be particularly grouchy. This particular story takes place on one of these days, right around Christmas time. Even though most of the family was on Uncle Todd's bad side, he'd still host Christmas dinner as tradition dictated. Once again, he hired Belle to help him prepare the house for the family. Belle could tell the old man was unhappy about something, so she decided to stay out of his way as much as humanly possible to avoid getting chewed out. That being said, he growled and grumbled at her so many times that day that it got on her nerves and she wished that she had elected to stay home. All that said, she was still being paid, so she decided to stick it out. They were on the second floor of the house, cleaning out the rooms when Uncle Todd went to the storage closet at the end of the hall to get more linen. Now I say storage closet, but it was a small windowless room that was too small to be a bedroom, so it became a storage closet. The lock on this door was the type that would lock on the outside, and unless you had a clothes hanger or knew how to disengage the lock on the inside, there was no unlocking it. Unfortunately, it was a flimsy. Trouble was bound to happen. Uncle Todd was in such a foul mood that he slammed the door to the closet shut after he entered. It was so loud that Belle jumped. Unfortunately, he slammed it so hard that it damaged the flimsy lock. She heard him cursing and trying to unlock the door. Then she heard him bark, "Belle." She stepped out. "Yes, Uncle Todd?" "Damn door won't unlock. Can you unlock it from your side?" Belle decided to get back at him for his nasty behavior. "You're my battle buddy, remember? I'm not supposed to leave your side." Cue a stream of curses from Uncle Todd. That would have made a sailor say, "Well, I never." He then finished with, "You're fired." Belle had just intended to let him stew for a few minutes while she found a clothes hanger to jab the lock, but he had sealed his own fate. "I'm fired? Okay, I guess I'll head home then. Have a good night. I'll see you tomorrow." "Wait, I meant from being my battle buddy." "Bye," Belle said. "Get back here right now." Belle snickered as she left to the sounds of him cursing and begging her to come back. Now she had no intention of letting the old salt stay there all night. Since he had the keys, she couldn't drive the pickup truck, so she elected to walk to the neighbors. Was about a couple of miles down the road. She was strolling down the side of the road when a squad car pulled over. A young man looked at her. "What are you doing out here, ma'am?" "Oh, my great uncle Todd Logan locked himself in his house and I was going to get help." "Todd Logan?" "I wasn't aware the old man had any family." He said. "Yep, he does," Belle said. "Well, son of a bitch," the young man said, thinking for a minute. "Hop in. I'll help you get him out." "Thank you. I hope I'm not interrupting anything." "Nah, I was delivering some things to my grandmother's." "She'll understand if I'm a few minutes late." Belle got in and the officer turned around, taking them back to the farm. Unfortunately, the lock was damaged to the point that jabbing the clothes hanger in the door didn't work, so the officer had to kick down the door. All in all, he was there for maybe an hour or so. Uncle Todd was nice and quiet and mumbled an apology to Belle after thanking the officer. Belle walked the officer back to the squad car, and while they walked, the officer introduced himself as Adam Smith and asked for her number. She gave it to him and they started dating after that. Uncle Todd was a lot nicer to Belle after that.